There are 20 weapons in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, with 2 exclusive to the New Game Plus modes, and 1 other weapon, the Ryno 8, is available after finding all the 10 info bots in the game, and I will have a dedicated video about that weapon up on the channel too. And you can find all the other 70 weapons by just talking to Mrs. Zircon every time you reach a new destination. So it's pretty easy to get all 20 of them, and then you also get the fully stacked trophy. In this video I will showcase all the weapons in action, mostly upgraded either through leveling or the upgrade system. There won't be any story spoilers or like late game areas in this video whatsoever. So if you at any point enjoyed the video, found it useful, then totally leave a like and let's go. During the opening mission, Ratchet grabs the familiar blast pistol, which now has a slower single shot if you push R2 halfway, and holding it will make you shoot faster. On level 5 you by the way got 3 bullets going to the target, but still then, it's one of the worst guns in the game overall. The Enforcer or Executor on level 5. I'll mostly be using the level 5 names by the way in this video. Either way, you can get this shotgun very early on, but it has a fun twist. If you namely push R2 halfway, you shoot 1 barrel. And if you push R2 all the way, you shoot 2 barrels at once. And there is a special arena level where you can only use this weapon. And then getting the upgrades, which lets you knock back enemies further, is amazing to push them off the platform. You can also increase the range in the upgrade menu, but it's still a close range weapon, of course, first and foremost. The Pixelizer is one of my favorite weapons from the 2016 remake, and you can now immediately get it after reaching the first vendor in New Game Plus. So you have to complete the main game first and then create a new save file to create New Game Plus. So yes, this also means that you can only use the Pixelizer when replaying the game in New Game Plus. And the weapon of course works similar to the Enforcer, only now with a fun twist, because the enemies turn into pixels when you hit them, which never gets old. Especially awesome to do against bosses or other like larger enemies. They completely change. And also when a pixel enemy dies, they break into blocks instead. I really love this gun. Going back to the weapons you can get during your first playthrough, next up is the Shatterblast grenade thrower, which of course lets you throw a grenade that explodes on impact. Super handy early on in the game against the bosses as it eats their health, but also when fighting multiple enemies at once to cause a lot of harm and have them stumble a bit. The thing is though that there are better explosive weapons later on in the game. But let's first touch on Mrs. Fugal, who is amazing against higher health targets. Throw her on the ground at the start of a fight and watch her eat away the health of the enemies or take out smaller targets. Upgrading it in the menu lets you deploy 2 of these creatures at once for even more damage, and they can sometimes distract the enemies too. So I just deploy them and yeah, let them do their job. One of my favorite weapons is the large Negatron Collider, a beam you can charge up already by pushing R2 halfway, and they can choose when to unleash it by fully pressing R2. It's great against bosses, but also when cleaning up multiple targets at once, and having it at level 5 unleashes this blast at the end of the beam. It's really strong, you can already buy it relatively early on, and it remains one of the best weapons till the end of the game. The Ricochet is pretty unique, but not for everyone. So first you need to mark an enemy, after which you can repeatedly press R2 to let the bullet hit that target multiple times after each other. You though become an easy target sometimes as well, because you are focused on hitting R2, so you might not like look at the environment and get hit. So be careful when you use it, but overall it can be pretty nice. The Drillpack is a homing missile launcher, only the missiles are drill dogs. With pressing R2 halfway, you can already mark the target, and you see that I can like mark 2 targets, and this is an upgrade you can get in the menu. But even without marking the targets, it's also just a great rocket launcher, but it totally adds some extra strategy if you take the time to select your targets. Lightning Strikes doesn't need that much of an explanation. You shoot this rapid fire weapon, and at one point enemies will be stunned from the shocks, which can also find multiple targets if they are close enough. and you can upgrade to improve this as well. It's pretty wild that even large bosses will be shocked by this effect and stunned for a short while, and they all have their cool unique animations. You really can't go wrong with the lightning strikes, and again, make sure that you upgrade it as well. A weapon I did not use that much until later in the New Game Plus mode is the Void Repulsor. Hold R2 halfway for a shield, which you can then blast in the face of the enemy like a shotgun when you are close enough. So projectiles will be catched by the shield, but the problem is that melee enemies can go through the shield. You can of course still blast them away though to keep them at a distance. So again, it's a very interesting weapon, just not really good in a lot of situations. The familiar Doom Blades are also in Rift Apart. Fire them and they will swarm a target. If you of course hold the trigger and keep firing, you deal quite a lot of damage over time. Upgrading it is key though, because the damage isn't that great at first. So once you spend the necessary crystals and leveled it up, it becomes an amazing weapon to deal with bosses and regular enemies. There are a few crowd control weapons in Rift Apart, and they are all great. Cold Snap freezes enemies in place after you shoot it with a pretty decent range, and then you increase the damage on your next hit. So great in combination with the Peacemaker, which I will touch on in a moment here, and then you deal way more damage to bosses than you normally would. Also great to use against a lot of smaller enemies that in New Game Plus will have quite a lot of health. Now with the Cold Snap you can just finish them off with a melee attack. The Sprinkler is also great to get an edge in battle. Drop it down and it will spray enemies close to it. If you level it up, it will increase the range, and then the enemies will be covered in acid, unable to do anything for a few seconds, and they take damage over time as well. So then you got time to think about your next move. Grab another weapon, for example. So really when things get a little heated, totally drop down the Sprinkler for some nice crowd control. And yeah, that weapon is also great in combination with the Peacemaker, which is your familiar rocket launcher, amazing to deal significant damage to high health targets. So I would overall save those rockets for the boss type enemies. The Bombardier is nice to just throw and have it clean some smaller enemies or deal some damage over time to bosses, but not much more. It targets one enemy and then drops bombs on it. But again, not much else going on here. The Blackhole Vortex is more exciting though. This minigun is awesome. You can already spin it up by holding R2 halfway and then just unleash it on the enemies. 300 bullets as a standard magazine is a lot, and after getting it to level 5 you also have these black holes appear after killing an enemy. The Headhunter Sniper works surprisingly well in close range. Zoom in with L2 halfway and pushing it all the way will slow down the time, and they can pick enemies off with headshots. Only especially on higher difficulties and New Game Plus, the enemies will have a lot of health. So if you then not like level this weapon up or upgrade it, it will take many shots to take the enemies out. Not with the Rhino, by the way, but more on that soon. First, the Glove of Doom, which of course a familiar weapon, dropping down the Agents of Doom, who will attack the enemies in the area. I mostly use it to clear some smaller enemies during a boss battle with like many ads that spawn. It's also pretty cute to see them attack these enemies. The Bouncer is also great for that, another weapon you can only get in New Game Plus, although to be fair, the Pixelizer is a pre-order gun, so if you pre-ordered Rift Apart, you can already use it during your first playthrough. The Bouncer has one bomb turned into smaller ones that go to the target, so again, really amazing to clean smaller enemies, but it can deal some nice damage to bosses as well. So a fun weapon to use for sure. There is just not a lot of ammo in the magazine. The Rhino doesn't have a lot of ammo either, and you also cannot get it from ammo crates, so you really have to go to the vendor. Again, you get this amazing weapon after finding all the 10 info bots in the game, and I will have a dedicated video about this really soon, so you know where to find them all. Of course, this weapon is a powerhouse, dropping items from other dimensions, including a Thunderjaw from Horizon Zero Dawn. These things will go away pretty swiftly, but it's just of course very cool, and you need to upgrade the weapon in the menu before you can like have things from other PlayStation games appear. It's the best weapon in the game. You also again get it at the end of the game, so we'll mostly be able to use it during New Game Plus. Good to know though is that it doesn't always work on bosses, like it doesn't seem to damage them often. So it's really mostly to clear out a lot of smaller enemies. Again, a video going way more in depth on this weapon and the things you can summon very soon here on the channel. So totally subscribe for more Rift Apart coverage. A like on the video would of course really help me out. And maybe that Ratchet video is already up. They can watch it by clicking on the screen. For now, I will speak to you next time. Let me know what your favorite weapon is in the comments down below. And goodbye.